Hey YouTube, Do-It-Yourself Junkie 369, and today we're on day 77 of our RV-10 build, and I'm going to work on finishing up the horizontal stabilizer. I don't know if I'll be able to do all 184 rivets that I have left today, but we'll see. 612. And actually there's probably more like 100 and 206 because I have these rivets along the top of the rear spar here, and then I also have the rivets that I skipped a couple pages back. The down in this area, that access to riveting them will be easier when this whole assembly is laid flat on the table. So we'll work on getting that done. And on this step, the instructions specifically call out placing the head of the rivet, the manufactured head, on the rear spar. Now that's different than all the other heads that I have on here holding on these hinges, but I don't think it'll matter in the end. So my tub of Clecos here are split open on one side, where is it? Over here. And so to get hopefully a more durable container, I went with a cashews container. Also, I plan on buying more of these 332nd Clecos, so I'll definitely need bigger container and possibly 2 containers once I get up to the 500 or so Clecos that I plan on needing. Well, that is a lot of Clecos. I'm probably going to need another container just to hold what I have so far. So this looks done, except for back on page 12, I skipped part of step 2, which was putting in these rivets here. And it's much easier to access this area once it's laying on its side. So I have 10 rivets to put in, and then this will be complete. And then we'll move on to the tail cone section, which is the last big component we have to build for this kit. with that, the horizontal stabilizer is finished. Stand by for obligated pictures with the family, since they helped a little bit. And we'll probably put this on the back of the workbench and the cradles to kind of hold it out of the way until I set up a place to hang it on the wall. And then we'll start with the tail cone, the last section. So we'll be moving on to section 10. So I just happen to have the 3/8 inch by 16 tap, and you're going to tap this end in 1.25 inches. So I put a mark on my tap to know where to stop. The other thing to note is the first couple threads here aren't a full 3/8 by 16. So I went in about 3 threads to measure my 1.25 inches. That way I make sure that I have that 1.25 inch depth that's fully threaded, not to the end of the tap. Normally I like to do this in a vise on a drill press or a mill to hold this perpendicular to the hole that I'm cutting, so that it doesn't get started off center. And then the other thing is, even though you're cutting aluminum, which is pretty easy, you'll want to use some sort of oil while you cut. No, this hole is a pretty messy process. What I think I'll do, instead of a vise, is I'll clamp this to the side of my bench, and then I'll make sure to use some motor oil that I have as my cutting fluid. And I'll put a rag on the floor to keep it from dripping all over the place. Okay, so I just looked it up. I was having a little bit trouble tapping, and it seemed the hole was undersized. So I checked it out, and the drill bit size for that 3/8 inch tap, 16 thread, is a 5/16, and the hole is ever so slightly undersized. So I would recommend drilling that out. Then while you're cutting, every so often you want to back your tap out. About a 1/4 turn to break off any chips. Okay, so today's day 83 of my RV-10 build. Normally I don't do this in the middle of a video, but I hurt myself last time I worked on the plane, and I've taken a couple days off. In there I did some research on what I want to delete or add to my wing kit when I order it, because I'm starting the tail cone. I really need to get that on order. The current lead time is now out 6 months, so hopefully it doesn't take that long, but we'll see. And during that time, I really looked into the zip tips, which a lot of people are now going with, and they look great. And LED lighting, and everybody's like, oh, they're quite expensive. Nobody's really forthcoming on just how much they paid for these things. Best I could figure doing research, it was somewhere between $2,500 to $3,000, and I guess I could have called up the company and got a quote from them, but I really didn't want to unless I was for sure going that direction. Now I looked at fly LEDs for my lighting system. They're fairly cheap though. Cheap meaning they'll set you back like $800, and you have to build them yourself, which is just some soldering. I've done a lot of it beforehand, so I'm not too worried about it. And then the parts deleted from the RV-10 kit, the wing kit, when you buy it, that and the lights would add up to about $1,400. So at least $1,000 short of what the zip tips cost. And they looked really cool. They supposedly save you some work. I'm not sure how much. I've gotten conflicting information on that. Some people are like, oh, these are great, they're finished really well, they saved me work. And other people are like, I did just as much work on these as required for the Vans wingtips that are included in the kit. I think part of that difference might be the fiberglass that Vans used to include is much rougher than what they now include in the kits. So that might be part of the disparity between the two groups of people. And other than that, I did see one person that did speed testing that said that his plane with zip tips lowered the stall speed about 5 knots. And I'm just not sure if that 5 knots and looking cool justifies an extra $1,000. So at this time I'm planning on going with the original Vans wingtips with the fly LEDs. One of the local builders that is near completion on his plane, I looked, and his wings have the normal tips on them. So, and this is a guy who bought an engine, ripped it completely apart, and rebuilt every single piece of it, and spent a whole bunch of time powder coating each individual little bit. And I mean, it just looks amazing, and his whole plane is like perfect. Most builders are looking at his plane going, if mine turns out half as good as his, I'll be thrilled. And that kind of reassured me too. If that guy looked at the normal tips and went, this is what I want, it's probably good enough for me. Plus, changing the stall, lowering the stall speed of the plane sounds great, but there's other stuff that's tied into that stall speed. And part of what I was thinking about this afternoon, if the stall speed's lower, that possibly means that his wings are generating a little bit more lift. Part of that's going to be because the wind going over the wing at the wingtips isn't sliding off the end of the wingtip. It has kind of a winglet to it. But I wondered how much extra drag that was adding, and the guy never said anything about his cruise speeds or top speed being reduced, and I wondered if that was a possibility due to the increased drag that these wings are producing since they're producing more lift. It's just a possibility. I didn't research it, and it doesn't seem like anybody's really looked at it. Most people doing this are just doing it purely out of cosmetics, and that's about it. I mean, there's also the claim that it saves you work, but that seems to vary from person to person, so mostly for looks. Other than that, I'm getting the deluxe fuel caps. It seems kind of a weird thing to spend extra money on. They don't perform any better, but I was looking at a set of lockable fuel caps, and there's the option of retrofitting the existing fuel cap flange with a lockable cap. That would be perfectly fine. There was some aluminum caps that I really liked that replace the plastic cap in the deluxe version, which were lockable and you could get them engraved. I can't remember who makes those offhand, but I thought, hey, I'll go with the standard deluxe caps. There was only a few dollars difference in price at just the basic deluxe without the locking cap. And then I could look at switching to those locking caps, and as an added benefit, you get a nice anodized flange on the inside, and the fuel filler hole is quite a bit larger. All stuff that I thought, hey, that's worth getting. Especially the few bucks more I'm looking at is probably, I want to say like $4 or something. I mean, it's not much of a price difference when you look at the price of deleting the fuel cap and the fuel cap flange from the kit, trading those out. Other than that, I looked at pitot tubes systems. I'm probably going with the Dynon tube that's built for an angle of attack setup. So it's got the 45-degree pitot tube hole on it, plus the normal one, plus it's heated. The masts to mount that, all those are coming from outside sources, not from vans. And the tubing used for the pitot system on vans is so cheap that I didn't bother deleting it. And then there was a bunch of discussion on online forums whether you should bother hooking up or even installing the stall kit that comes with the Vans kit. One thing I did read about is even if you plan on not using that, you cannot delete it from the kit because it's considered a safety item, and Vans will not delete safety items. So I left the pitot system in there. It's not going to really save me any money. And then I left the stall warning kit in there, and I might actually install that and have both that and the angle of attack. That way I have kind of a backup system. Basically I have two backups, or I have a backup system for the other system. And really, I think people are deleting it because one, they have the AOA system, and so it's kind of redundant, which I mean I have no problem with. There was talk about not being able to hear the buzzer when you're using noise canceling headphones. At the same time though, I'm wondering if you're using noise canceling headphones, I'm assuming people spending that kind of money on a headset are probably running FIS systems, and I'm wondering why they don't just run the stall warning into their FIS system and have that sound coming through the headset. It kind of puzzled me why not keep that. So the only other thing I could come up with was people not installing it because they didn't like the cosmetics of it. To me, it's not a big deal. Planes have stall systems on the wing, and to me it just looks like a normal part of the wing. I hardly even notice them unless I'm doing a walk around and I'm specifically looking at that to make sure that it's good to go for the flight. Other than that, I put in my order. I have my new tap set and tap handle in. Those are going to be really good to use. Basically, it comes with a taper tap, a plug tap, and then a bottoming tap. And the tap I was trying to use almost seemed like a bottoming tap, and that was not the correct one. That's probably why there was so much extra cutting force going on and threads getting stripped out and what led to it snapping. I'm going to start with the taper tap, which has like a 9 to 15 thread lead in to full thread cutting. And also that will help keep it square, or not square, that will help keep it parallel to the center axis of the hole. And then much better tap handle than the cheap one that I had. I also added some spare blind rivets, and I put in the order for the piece that I messed up. Unfortunately, that hasn't come in. Last thing that I went online and purchased was this book right here. If you're building an aircraft, I was told by the person that will be inspecting my aircraft, he had this book in his hand. He said, "Do you own a copy of this?" And I was like, "No." And he looked at me and goes, "Why not?" And basically that is a lot about what you need. Like if you have a question of, is this right or is this acceptable, it's going to be in this book. And so if you're looking at, say you have some rivets and you're trying to identify them, this has identification tables for rivets, what the different kinds are. It has how to do your wiring. I haven't had a chance to look more in depth than that. It has how to do your weight and balance. So basically, if you have a question, you can find it in here rather than going online and asking somebody and not knowing whether or not they're telling you the truth. So definitely, if you're looking at building, pick up one of these. So we'll be skipping the steps that are used in and moving ahead to step 4 on page 2 of section 10, which is some cutting with the hacksaw. And on that, it tells you to use a AA6-063 3/4 by 3/4. That comes out of subkit 8, and there's quite a bit of angle aluminum. Most of it's 1 inch by 1 inch. There is a couple 3/4 by 3/4 pieces. They're too short, I believe, if I remember correctly. I measured them and they were shorter than this piece. But the real kicker is that -063 is the thickness. So that is about a 1/16 of an inch thick for this leg. The other angles that you have, even the ones that are 3/4 inch width here, will be 1/8 inch stuff, which is quite a bit thicker. So go for the thin piece. And that's what is being specified here. That way you know you have the right piece and you're not cutting out the wrong piece. Okay, next step is to straighten these. You can see there they have bowed from the punch process. So you just stick it in the vise, put some pressure in the direction you want to straighten it out, and then strike it with a heavy mallet near where it's going into the vise. And you want to get this within a 1/16 of an inch straightness. So when you put this along it, biggest gap you should see is a 1/16. Right now it's closer to an 1/8. So that's pretty good, except for it looks like I went a little too far on the end here. So we'll just bend that back. Okay, the next step is to clamp this piece in place on this bulkhead, but because it's J channel, you need to be able to reach over the J to clamp to it, and the clamps I have aren't going to be able to do that. Both the aircraft specific ones and my woodworking clamps. So what you can do is put a block of wood in here. It just has to be 3/4 inch thick. So I'm using a piece of scrap plywood left over from making these from the trailing edge of the elevators. And then I can reach through this lightning hole here with the clamp and clamp it down. And initially I just have it real light so I can reposition this to make sure to get the edge on the lines that I drew as part of this step. And then make sure that I get it centered. There's two ways of centering it. You can mark a center line on this and then on the bulkhead, or I'm using where the radius here on the edges bent over into the flange starts, because that's about the width of the part. So I can just eyeball it and get it centered. So step 5 is pretty much the same as step 3. You're going to be attaching the rudder cable angle bracket here. So you draw a line off the center line of the holes at 7/16 inch. And that's where the edge of this bracket goes. And you're going to clamp through the lightning hole again. And to get something to hold the bracket down, you'll have to use another wood block, and 3/16 or 3/4 of an inch thick is just barely thick enough to handle this one, but it will work. And what I'm doing now is extending the lines out that I marked, because my block will cover the original 2 lines that I made. And then Same thing as far as centering it. You can either use the end of the radius here for the flange, or you can mark some center lines on both parts and line those up. And it doesn't list a diameter in there, but because it says to repeat step 3, it's probably a safe bet that it's number 30. Here's, this part is done for now, so we'll set it aside and move on to page 4. First step on page 4 is to take this piece out of kit 8. This is angle inch by inch and 1/8 inch thick, and make a part out of it described here in figure 1. So kind of the same thing we did back in step 4 on page 2, except for different dimensions. You may have noticed just now I was using a Scotch-Brite pad to deburr. I might do this as I get into the wing kit more often, especially since there'll be a lot more pieces with flanges on them like this that are hard to deburr with this tool, and I have been using sandpaper in the past. I'm still up in the air whether I like this or sandpaper better. This was a leftover piece of Scotch-Brite I had from another project working in aluminum that I was doing, building some alcohol stoves for camping. Uh, I like it because I can just kind of ball it up and get into any corner, and it's more flexible than the sandpaper. I don't like it because it wears through faster, and it seems to have trouble taking down some of the sharper or larger burrs that the sandpaper has no problem with. So I might end up using both, quite honestly, but don't expect to see this on the tools list just yet. I haven't gone out and bought any. I can't remember what the coarseness of the green is versus the red. I want to say the red was more coarse, but that's usually what's recommended for the kits and deburring. That might be part of the reason I'm having trouble taking down some of the larger burrs on this piece. So when I wear this piece out, which will probably happen during this tail cone, I'll go buy some red and use it for a little bit and see whether or not I like it or sandpaper, and I'll let you know. I marked a D on this to let me know I deburred the edges. The plans here are kind of spotty on what gets deburred and what doesn't. I could go ahead and deburr everything because I know it's going to happen, but I like deburring kind of at the end, I guess, of everything. So when it tells me to deburr, I'll do it, but for now I'm not going to say deburr this piece, even though I know it needs to be deburred at the end. Mainly as a way to break up some deburring. And just putting a D on parts that have already been deburred will help me later remember what was done and what wasn't done. I put in my order for the wing kit today, so that's pretty exciting. Haven't heard back what the final price is going to be with my deletions and everything and additions. And then also I haven't seen any movement or charges for the piece that I ruined and when that's going to ship. So I might end up calling Vans here in a couple days and see if somehow that got passed over, or maybe it's just they have so many orders coming in that it's a backlog right now. I heard because everybody's stuck at home due to the pandemic that sales have increased, but then they also have personnel shortages, which is causing a bunch of issues. That's part of the reason the wings all of a sudden have a 6-month lead time. I'm hoping it does not take that long. Since there are right and left of these frames or bulkheads, I am going to be marking them as I remove this blue plastic. That way they do not get mixed up while I'm working on the deburring, and then I can get them back together correctly also after I match drill and take them apart to deburr the holes and go back and prime them. Because I'm quite sure if you putting them together, you might not end up with it wrong. But I think the big deal might be which side is the top and which side is the bottom. Which you could figure that out by looking at them. The bigger radius is probably on the top and the smaller radius is on the bottom for all of these. But why cause yourself that problem and possibility of getting it wrong? It's easier just to mark the part. Okay, so I'm going to have to end this video. That way it doesn't get too long. Basically, I'm on the F-106 bulkhead, which is the one that connects into the fuselage of the plane when I get that built. And I'm deburring it so I can click it together and drill it. And that's where I'll continue tomorrow. But I need to I just need to go in and rest. I worked a pretty good amount today, well over 3 hours, and I look forward to coming out here tomorrow, getting some work done, and then Sunday getting some work done and making some headway on this. That way, hopefully I'll have everything done by the time my wing kit shows up. If you want to build an aircraft yourself, go ahead and contact Vans and order it. Don't think that any grumbling from me has been really complaining. I enjoy doing this. I just wish I had more time to work on it. Some of it is repetitive, like deburring, but that's the price of admission, other than purchasing the kit, which is the real price of admission. But if you do that, please look below in the description for my builder's number, and Vans will send me $100 as kind of a referral program, and that will really help me out when it comes time to purchase more parts from them or kits. If you like the video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you got any questions, leave a comment. I'll try to answer what I know. Or if you just want to talk about something or make a comment, by all means. And if you want to see more of these videos, think about subscribing. You don't have to hit the bell icon, just subscribe. And in your subscription list, every time one of your channels that you subscribe to puts up a new video, it'll pop up with a little dot next to that channel's icon. And so it kind of notifies you, but it's not as bad as the bell icon, which sends you an email every time a new video is posted. You can go ahead and do that as well, but you might get a lot of notifications as I upload other stuff around the house, archery, camping, bow fishing, chess, workout, fitness. I mean, I post a lot of different stuff just besides airplanes. And in fact, I'm even thinking about starting to post some flying videos when I get nice enough weather to go out and go flying. And probably some flight sim videos with the new Flight Sim 2020. It's been out for a while. I've owned it for a while. There's a couple things that irritate me about the software that I think could be done better, and a lot of stuff that I like. It's definitely a step up from FXX, which I was using before. And I'll have a video later, probably me flying the exact same thing side by side, so you can see for yourself if it's worth the cash. Personally, I think it is, and I enjoy it both as a game and a simulator. And I think I'll put up some videos of flying around in it and just some different stuff that you can do. I feel like it really helped when I was doing my private pilot's training, and based on it being able to connect to my flight software on my phone or my tablet, the last instructor I flew with, I did a short 1-hour instrument flight lesson, and we looked at what the software on my phone, and then when I mentioned I could tie it into flight simulator like FSX, he was really impressed and said that would be a great training tool. Now, it doesn't give you any training time that you can count or log, but if you're learning stuff in there that applies to the plane, it's a lot cheaper than trying to learn it on the plane. And I'll probably get in depth into that, like how to use flight sim software, the aid in training, even though you're not able to log anything. It's like people that are in families that fly, they can't log any of their hours when they're at the controls of the aircraft when their parent is flying, but they still have a huge leg up and probably spend less time with an instructor training because they're getting that extra flight time that's not being logged in their family aircraft. Anyway, that's all I have. Thanks for watching.